Lake Cook to Montrose, outbound 25. Kennedy, 56 minutes. O'Hare to downtown, 28 from Montrose, 22 in the Express. Outbound 35 minutes to O'Hare. Eisenhower, it's now an hour and 7 minutes. 390 to downtown, 47 minutes from Mannheim. Outbound 55 minutes to 390. Stevenson, an hour 16. 355 to Lakeshore Drive. Outbound 41 minutes. Ryan, 35 minutes. 95th to downtown. I-57, 32 minutes. I-80 to the Burns Bishop, 440. Delays on the eastbound Reagan Tollway or Farnsworth to Wheel and Winfield to Gackley. Northbound Veterans Memorial, I-55 most of the way to Ogden at Roosevelt St. Charles. I'm Jim Talamonte on AM 560 The Answer.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next. Your official Chicagoland weather forecast from the 1 Hour Heating and Air Conditioning Weather Center and our meteorologist, Steve Williams.
We do have a lakeshore flood advisory in effect today. It'll be partly sunny, the high 33. Clear and very cold tonight, low 17. Tomorrow, partly sunny, cold, high 33. And then times of clouds and sun on Saturday, the high 44. I'm Steve Williams on AM 560, The Answer.
22 at O'Hare, 27 Lakefront. Your next news update is at 8:30. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Don't miss the ammo event this weekend at Shoot Point Blank. Pick up great deals on ammo, like 50 rounds of 9mm as low as $10.99 per box. The more ammo you buy, the more you save. Load up this weekend at Shoot Point Blank's ammo event. See store for details.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy updating the James Younger case in Texas.
Oh, yeah, the 7-year-old boy who was going to have chemical castration because mommy wants the boy to be a girl.
Right, per a divorce proceeding and a custody arrangement. Dr. Ann Georgioulas claims her son identifies as a girl. She wants to put him on experimental drugs. Judge, after Governor Greg Abbott of Texas, Senator Ted Cruz, Texas, weighed in on the case, a judge later expanded upon her ruling and said that James's dad is going to have a say in his son's medical treatment as well.
Good.
7-year-old James off to school. Friends of the father shared images of James and his brother Jude heading to school dressed as boys. Jeff emailed the principal today, and James and Jude's teachers had reported that there was zero stress or disruptions in the classroom today, just another day in school, prayers answered. The group Save James posted on Facebook with a prayer emoji. Dr. Michelle Cretella, who's a pediatrician and ED at the American College of Pediatricians, suggested previously that mom, in this case, could have Munchausen by proxy.
Oh.
She could be the real issue here. It's a disorder in which, of course, the adult feigns either a physical or psychological condition in their child for their own subconscious reasons. Most often, the perpetrator is a biological mother. Most often, she has a background in health or medicine.
Okay.
Cretella saying, in the case of imposing gender dysphoria in a son, there are cases in the scientific literature of severe maternal depression triggered in a mother longing for a daughter.
Oh.
The mother's depression lifts when the boy dresses and acts like a girl. This has been termed gender mourning, an actual psychological condition. I don't know. She's diagnosing from afar, but nonetheless, James seems to be growing out of whatever confusion he was experiencing, whatever he indicated in terms of wanting to be a girl that his mother picked up on and his father certainly did not. And this, again, goes to what's happening in America. That is a disturbing case, and it made international news, and we're going to follow it, and we should. But in school districts around the country, including here, Palatine District 211, and others, what's happening is the same thing that happened in Fairfax County, the 10th largest public school district in the nation. Fairfax County voted 10-1 to let boys use the girls' bathroom. 10-1. This is a piece by Kathy Roos at thestream.org. She's works for the Family Research Council. She said, I never focused on public schools. My kids go to Catholic schools. That was the center of our universe. But then she heard about this vote, and she started to look into what was going on in the Fairfax public school system. If only more parents would do the same. There I saw moms and dads begging the school board at these board meetings she attended to stop threatening their child's privacy and safety in intimate spaces and on sports fields. They pleaded with the board to stop the pornographic reading assignments. They tearfully asked them to respect their family's religious beliefs. Nope. And this all began, with the sentimental passage of a non-discrimination policy that included gender identity in 2015. Every year, beginning in 7th grade, children in Fairfax County school system will be taught lessons on transgender theory. For example, the rest of the curriculum. 6th grade lessons talk of sexual partners. 7th graders get a lesson with 11 references to oral sex. Beginning in 7th grade, students are taught their sex was assigned at birth and taught about transgenderism as a healthy sexual identity. 8th graders get a lesson with 22 references to all forms of graphic sex. What are the benefits of abstaining from sexual activity until in a faithful monogamous relationship? It's a fake abstinence message that essentially argues against. 10th graders get lessons in promoting abortion, getting an abortion without telling their parents. This is the curriculum. Fairfax County School Board automatically enrolls every child in 80 hours of sex ed without the parents' permission. And that's the syllabus, what I was just describing.
80 hours.
It's not, and I apologize.
It's 2 class periods at the most.
I apologize for using the term sex ed because it's now called family life.
Oh, yeah, Dan. Get it right.
Last year, Fairfax County stopped using the terms male or female in the context of biological sex. Last spring, the school board voted 10-2 to remove the concept of biological sex and replace it with the term sex assigned at birth, as you just heard me read. Another sex ed lesson voted by the school board last year involves a pill known as PrEP, pre-exposure prophylaxis. It's designed for a particularly high-risk, I've never heard of it, but it's designed for a particularly high-risk population, gay men with multiple sex partners of unknown HIV status. It's a controversial drug even in the gay community. With a 10% failure rate, it lowers the risk of infection enough to encourage some to abandon the use of condoms. Michael Weinstein, the founder and director of the AIDS Healthcare Foundation, said of the drug, it will cause a public health catastrophe by triggering a dangerous increase in risky sex. The school board voted 10-2 to promote it to students every year beginning in 9th grade, even when the drug was not approved by the FDA for their use. This is how radical the agenda is. And on the trans issue, since we were talking about James Younger,
Yeah.
I mean, it's worth remembering a Swedish academic study found that suicide rate among post-op trans-identified people 20 times higher than the suicide rate among non-trans. Miss Bruce makes the important point. This is not about bathrooms and it's not about bullying. It's about forcing all children and families to change their behaviors, their speech, and ultimately their beliefs to conform to the new government-mandated social orthodoxy. Your religion is discriminatory, thus you must abandon that belief system, among other even secular, commonsensical beliefs. 10th largest school district in the country, Virginia. And you want to understand why Virginia is for Democrats, is for cultural Marxists? You're surprised by Tuesday's results? Don't be. Wow. Happening all over the country. For more on this topic, we're pleased to be joined by Luke Goodrich. He's the Deputy General Counsel at the Becket Fund for Religious Liberty. He's the author of the new book, Free to Believe, The Battle Over Religious Liberty in America. Luke, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, Dan. Hey, Amy. Thanks for having me.
So why don't we start with the topic we were discussing, the Younger case in Texas, this Fairfax County political agenda so instituted by its school board, and just how much of a threat that sort of the trans rights movement, the gender as a social construct movement is to religious liberty in this country.
Yeah, it's a major issue. You've really hit the nail on the head. That long-standing traditional beliefs about human sexuality, even about biology, are now viewed in many quarters as controversial and even discriminatory. So you mentioned James Younger. I'm handling a case right now out of Texas. I'm representing a Catholic hospital system and an association of Christian doctors and healthcare professionals. Because at the end of the Obama administration, the government passed a new regulation under Obamacare saying that all doctors and hospitals across the country would have to participate in gender transition procedures, these kinds of controversial sex change operations and cross-sex hormones, or else they would be deemed to be discriminating based on gender identity, a major threat to the practice of medicine. So we brought a lawsuit and got a federal judge to strike that regulation down and say that doctors and hospitals cannot be forced to participate in these procedures in violation of their religious beliefs and their medical judgment. But the ACLU's intervened in that case. They can appeal, and these are the types of regulations we're increasingly seeing across healthcare, even homeless shelters where there's pressure to allow biological males to enter women's homeless shelters. So it's a deeply troubling area.
And how can people protect their religious freedoms?
Well, that's why I've written Free to Believe, and I offer not only an understanding of what the conflicts are, but practical steps that all Americans can take to ensure that their religious freedom remains protected. Whether you're a business owner, ministry leader, pastor, just a man on the street, there are practical steps that you can take to protect your businesses and ministries. And that involves things like looking at your own employment policies. A lot of these religious freedom conflicts are coming from disgruntled employees who are suing businesses or ministries because of their religious beliefs. You can also look at threats coming from the outside. What types of lines of business are likely to attract a lawsuit, or what types of partnerships with the government are going to bring conflict. And then lastly, we can just look at our daily life, at staying informed, being politically involved, and making sure that the government knows religious freedom is a fundamental human right, extends to people of all faiths, and is an essential part of American society.
How important is the case before the High Court right now, before the Supreme Court, that the Detroit Funeral Homes case as it pertains to private property, religious belief, employment policy?
It's a very important case. So there's actually three cases: Bostock, Altitude Express, and Harris Funeral Homes. And they involve employment discrimination laws. So for a long time, a law called Title VII prohibits discrimination in employment on the basis of sex. But a number of LGBT rights groups are trying to expand this law to cover not only sex, but cover sexual orientation and gender identity. So as you said, a Christian owner of a funeral home was sued by one of the employees who wanted to show up to work as the opposite sex. And if the High Court expands the law in this way, there are literally tens of thousands of religious organizations across the country that have traditional religious beliefs about sex and marriage, and often expect their employees to live in accordance with those beliefs and not undermine the mission of the organization. And if the court goes the wrong way on this case, those tens of thousands of religious organizations would all face new lawsuits and new potential liability. So it's a very significant issue.
I've said of President Trump on the issue of life and the issue of religious liberty more generally, that he's sort of like Batman. He's not the hero you want. He's the hero you need, as it's turned out. Would you say that that one of the enduring legacies of President Trump, whether he's one term or two, is what he has done to, at least in an attempt to advance protections for life and religious liberty in the last 3 years?
There have been some very important strides made. And one area in particular, just yesterday, there was a court ruling involving a new Trump-era regulation designed to protect conscience in the context of healthcare.
Right.
Similarly, we're currently, my firm Becket represents the Little Sisters of the Poor, and they are a Catholic order of nuns who, during the Obama administration, the government tried to force them to provide contraception and abortion-inducing drugs in their health insurance plan in violation of their religious beliefs. We took their case all the way to the Supreme Court, And the Supreme Court ruled in our favor and said, surely the most powerful government in the world can find a way to give out contraception without using Catholic nuns. And then President Trump issued a good regulation protecting the Little Sisters of the Poor. But that's now being challenged in court as well. A number of Democrat state attorneys general are suing the Little Sisters and suing the Trump administration. And we've appealed that case back to the Supreme Court as well. So you're absolutely right. The administration, for all its flaws, has made some very significant strides on religious freedom.
What do you say to men and women of the left who profess to be Christian, like the people Amy goes to church with?
No, they're Christian.
That profess to be Christian. And they vote for Obama because he's affable and he seems like a nice guy. As Mark Hemingway said, sure, he seems like an affable guy and a nice guy, and he was good father. And he's the same guy who tried to force nuns to pay for abortions. What do you say about them, or maybe encouraging them? I don't know. What do you? I'm at a bit of a loss, as you can tell. What do you say to them about how you reconcile the positions you're taking in secular life with the faith and the protection of the faith that you profess to hold dear?
Yeah, I'm not in the business of telling anybody how they should vote, but when it comes to religious freedom, I wrote Free to Believe in order to help Christians, among others, understand why religious freedom matters and how it's threatened and how we protect it. And I think there are some Christians, both on the right and the left, who get religious freedom wrong, mainly by treating it exclusively as a political or legal or constitutional issue. Just a religious freedom as a culture war issue. But if you are a Bible-believing Christian, there's a lot of messages in Scripture underscoring the importance of religious freedom, not just as this political tool in a culture war, but as a basic issue of biblical justice rooted in the nature of God and the nature of man. And it's not something we can just cast aside as a luxury, say, oh, well, the church flourishes under persecution, bring it on. And it's also not something we can just pretend there are no problems here in America, because there are real problems.
How concerned were you?
And we need to. Yeah.
I'm sorry. How concerned were you that Bobby O'Rourke, before he exited stage left, raised the issue, and I don't think he's alone in this belief system, of suggesting that if you don't comport your faith to the government's secular orthodoxy on certain issues, you should lose your nonprofit status?
Yeah, that was deeply troubling, but also not surprising, because if you pay attention to a lot of the arguments on the progressive left, they tend to liken traditional Christian religious beliefs about sex and marriage to a form of bigotry akin to racism. And the government has powerful tools to eradicate racism, and they now want to train those tools on traditional Christian ministries, churches, and businesses, and strip them of tax-exempt status and punish them. So it's a very significant threat. But I address in my book why that analogy to racism fails and how we can resolve these conflicts in a way that respects deeply held beliefs about sex and marriage.
He is Luke Goodrich. He's the Deputy General Counsel at the Becket Fund for Religious Liberty, the author of the new book, Free to Believe, The Battle Over Religious Liberty in America. Luke, thanks for joining us. Good luck with the book.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Amy.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line, but we have some breaking news. Eddie Johnson is going to be stepping down today, according to ABC 7. And our new interim police chief is going to be Charlie Beck. He's the recently retired chief of police at Los Angeles Police Department. So, Eddie Johnson stepping down.
There's only one radio show in Chicago talking about today's biggest stories and telling you what they really mean. That show is this one, Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
Now that winter's here, how's your fireplace and chimney? Before you light the first fire, have your chimney cleaned and inspected by Chicagoland's most